Alright, so this is one of those weeks where I look at my notes and just go, okay, a lot actually happened, especially since the last time I was on this channel because I had some issues with my voice, but now I'm back. Anyways, now I'm back, and we've got China's homegrown graphics card getting a price cut. We've got Intel's entire next-gen desktop roadmap leaking out in serious detail, and we've got an AMD chip that isn't even a real product yet, and is already embarrassing the current lineup. That last one is honestly the story I can't stop thinking about, and I'll get to why in a minute, but if you're into this kind of thing, hardware news that actually moves the needle instead the same recycled rumors, do me a favor and hit subscribe before you scroll off, because I cover this stuff every single week, and I genuinely hate for you to miss the next one. Cool? Cool. Let's get into it. So, we start in China with a company called Lisuan Tech. If you don't know them, they were founded about 5 years ago in Shanghai by a few former S3 graphics engineers, and they've been quietly building a real, from-the-scratch gaming GPU. Their card is the LX 7G100. Quick spec refresher because it matters. The 7G100 runs Lisuan's own 7G106 die on a 6nm process. You get 12 gigs of GDDR6 on a 192-bit bus, PCIe 4.0 by 16, 192 texture units, 96 ROPs, and a 225-watt board power figure fed by a single 8-pin connector. Weirdly, there's no HDMI port at all, just 4 DisplayPort 1.4a outputs, which is a strange thing to leave off a mainstream gaming card, but okay. Here's the new part. The card originally launched as a Founders Edition at 3,299 yuan, which is roughly $485. Now, Lisuan has put a standard retail version on sale through JD.com for 2,688 yuan, or about $397. That's 611 yuan cheaper and 18.5% cut, and it dropped on July 17, so if you're eyeing this thing, you just got noticeably more affordable. Now, I want to be straight with you because hype helps nobody, and in 3D Mark, this card lands around a 5-year-old RTX 3060, which sounds okay until you actually load games. Cyberpunk at 1080p with upscaling and frame generation averaged 88 FPS, while an RTX 4060 did 232, and Intel's Arc B580 did 243 in the same test. So the gap in real games is still very much big, and the price relative to that performance is still very much high. But, and this is where I land positively, the fact that games launch and run at all is a genuinely big deal. Earlier Chinese efforts like more threads needed months of driver patches before stuff even worked properly. Lisuan showed up with the WHQL certification, which makes them only the 4th GPU maker ever to earn it, alongside Nvidia, AMD, and Intel. That is not nothing. I don't need this card to beat a 4060 today. I need the company to exist, keep shipping, and keep cutting prices. And this price drop tells me they're serious about that. More competition is exactly what this market has been begging for. So, I'm rooting for them through and through. Okay, next up, and this is the one that the title is really pointing at, Intel's next-gen desktop chips, codenamed Nova Lake S. They just had a big roadmap leak, and it fills in a lot of blanks. First, branding. Intel is sticking with the Core Ultra name, and these will be the Core Ultra 400 series, so think something like Core Ultra 9 400K at the very top. A logo render of that exact chip is a part of the leak, which is how we're fairly confident on the naming. They're also bringing the new Z990 and Z990 370 chipsets to the party. Now, the interesting bit, the launch schedule, because Intel is doing something a little unusual here, because instead of dropping everything at once, they'll be staggering it across basically all of 2027. And according to the leaked roadmap, the 28-core version comes first, with embargo windows running from late January through March 2027. That chip is 8 performance cores, 16 efficiency cores, and 4 low-power cores on a single compute tile. The unlocked K-series models follow around March and April, and then the smaller 16-core and 8-core parts arrive from late March into May. And then there's the big one, the flagship 52-core monster that's a 16 performance cores, 32 efficiency cores, and 4 low-power cores using 2 compute tiles, and doesn't show up until somewhere between late May and September 2027. So the Halo chip is the last thing out of the door, not the first one. On the architecture side, the P cores are a new design called Coyote Cove, and the E cores are called Arctic Wolf, with those 4 low-powered cores living on the I/O die. There's also talk of large cache versions, basically Intel's answer to AMD's XD3 gaming chips, which would be huge if it pans out, because that is the one area AMD has been running away with. Now, here are 2 quick caveats I have to mention. This roadmap reportedly traces back to a July 2025 internal document, so Intel could have easily have shuffled things around since then, and there's a separate reporting that Intel is moving most of Nova Lake production in-house onto its own 18A process instead of leaning on TSMC, so take these dates as directional, not as gospel. My honest take, I actually like this a lot from Intel. A staggered launch during a component crunch is a very smart decision. Get the mainstream stuff out first, then bring the flagship when the yields are ready. And if that big cache gaming variant is real, Intel finally has a shot at answering the X3D chips that have owned the gaming crown for years now. That's not a company rolling over. This is a company with an actual plan, and I want them competitive because we all win when they are competing. Here's the segment that genuinely made me sit up, and honestly the reason the end of Intel framing isn't just clickbait. AMD's next-gen Zen 6 mobile chip, codenamed Medusa Point, showed up on Geekbench, and the numbers are kind of ridiculous for something that isn't even finished. So this is an engineering sample, a 10-core, 20-thread part listed as AMD Plum MDSI. It's scored 3,329 in a single core and a 16,555 in multi-core on Geekbench 6. To put that into context, AMD's current mobile flagship, the 12-core Ryzen AI 9HX 370, averages around 2,605 single and 13,397 multi. So this Zen 6 sample is roughly 28% faster in single core and 24% faster in multi-core. Against the 10-core Ryzen AI 9 365, those gaps stretch out to about 35% and 33% respectively. Let me say that again, because it's wild. A 10-core not final chip is beating a current 12-core flagship by nearly 30% in a single thread. And it's not even done cooking yet. The exact same sample already improved about 5% in single core and nearly 10% in multi-core over a run from just a few days earlier. There's clearly more left on the table. Now, the really nerdy detail I love here is the clock speed. The single core score came while the chip averaged just 4.46 gigahertz across the run, with peaks at around 5.37. The current Strix Point chips it's beating were running at higher average clocks. So Medusa Point is landing bigger numbers at lower frequency, which just means that the architecture itself, the IPC, took a serious jump. That's the good kind of gain, the kind you can't just fake with more power. On manufacturing, the base 10-core chiplet is expected to use TSMC's N3P node paired with a chiplet that carries I/O and graphics. The higher-end versions reportedly added a 12-core compute die on the better N2P node, which could push total core counts up towards 22 in a mobile part. And remember, this is just the laptop chip. The desktop Zen 6 parts are rumored to clock way higher, with leakers throwing around numbers near 7 GHz thanks to an even more aggressive TSMC node, plus more cores and more cache on top. So yeah, if a mobile engineering sample is already doing this, I don't even want to imagine what the desktop X3D versions will look like. My opinion, this is the most excited I've been about a CPU generation in a good while, probably since the first Threadripper. AMD looks like it's about to swing really hard, and that's fantastic, because it forces everyone, Intel included, to bring their absolute best. So that's where we're at. China's GPU underdog is getting cheaper and slowly but surely more legit. Intel has a real, detailed plan for 2027 with a gaming cache chip that could genuinely shake things up, and AMD's Zen 6 is out here making current flagships look old before it's even released. Is this literally the end of Intel? No, I don't actually think so. I think Nova Lakes gives them a real fighting chance, but the pressure AMD is putting on right now is very, very real, and it's only gonna get more intense. If you enjoyed this and found it useful, a quick like genuinely helps the channel way more than you'd think, and if you want me to keep breaking down every leak like this the moment it drops, go ahead and subscribe so you're here for the next one. I've got a feeling 2027 is gonna be a really fun year to build a PC. I'll catch you in the next one.